All right, let's get her going for the next 2 hours on the Real Kyper and Bourne Show. Nick Kypreos, Sammy McKee, Derek Brandeo, Jennifer Rolnick, and in for the next 2 hours for the vacationing Justin Bourne is no other, the wonderful, the talented. Let's put our hands together for the lovely Gord Stellick.
Kippy, thank you. And by the way, thank you. I'll start off, don't screw up Jennifer's name because I think she was the first person, I forget how many years ago, when someone says to you, I was single for a long time, and they'll say, hey, I know somebody you used to go out with or something like that.
Yeah.
And then she said she had a friend that I went out with her mom. That was the first. Yeah. So, yeah, that was all of a sudden the ageism kind of thing. So it wasn't that her friend I went out with. It was her mom I went out with. So
you're not that far off from getting grandmothered.
So anyway.
Gord.
Anyway, it was good seeing her. Anyway, had a good situation with the friend's mom. So anyway, it was all good. All good.
Well, we're glad you're here. We're glad everybody's watching, listening on Sportsnet 590, The Fan, Sportsnet 360, and Sportsnet Plus. This is our Leaf Hour edition. It is game day. Sammy, right back in the thick of things. One of your favorite clubs, the Boston Bruins, tonight for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
I was thinking about this matchup today. When's the last? I guess both of these teams have been solidly in playoff spots pretty much throughout the whole Matthews era, right? I guess the first couple years it would be more, but this is the first time these two teams have met where one of them is in real disarray, where one of them is outside of the playoffs, they're injured, they're really struggling. This feels like a massive game for the Bruins, even though we all wrote them off yesterday, Kyper. Yep. It's just, it feels weird to go in there with them being so, I don't guess disarray. Is that an okay word, Gordon?
I think it works.
Yeah. It's you're right, because during the regular season, they've all had pretty good runs. Regular season runs, and every time in the playoffs, of course, it's the Bruins that broke Leaf fans' hearts. But so 2010, Kyper, you're on the panel with Bob McKenzie, Darren Pang, the Olympics.
Yep.
And you had the expression about when you got him by the throat, put your foot on, whatever it may be. You had a pretty
remember that?
Yeah, I remember all that stuff. I don't get out much, right? So I just all these turns. So yeah, you were. Hey man, that was big stuff being on that panel.
Well, when you think again, the numbers for this past week, 16 million people, I think, across North America, and in Canada, we had that number for the gold medal game alone in Canada.
This was the first time in 15 years that compared to that. It really was, right? So anyway, but the point being is that's what the Leafs have a chance to do. You're not going to eliminate the Boston Bruins, but man, they're there. They're there. Charlie McAvoy, that's a huge injury.
Yeah.
Those are the biggest stories. We'll talk about the Tkachuks later on and all that, but I mean, no Hampus Lindholm, no Charlie McAvoy. From the get-go, the Boston Bruins have had an uneven season, and they keep thinking, then at one point you're going, hey, don't tell me both Boston and Tampa Bay won't make the playoffs. Well, it seems like John Cooper's team got their act together before the break. But Boston, man, and you got a chance to say a big win on the road, and all of a sudden the Bruins languish and it gets tougher. They have not been able to get to that. It's been insurmountable for them this year, which is puzzling because other years they were home and cooled out.
In about 25 minutes, we'll welcome in Andy Brickley, who does the color commentating for the Boston Bruins. He'll join us, help us tee up tonight's contest. Outside of that, the Leafs continue to get points as we close in ever so closely to the trade deadline. And just wondering, Gord, between what you saw going into the Four Nations break to what we saw as early as this past weekend, how much of a swing are you on wants and needs the rest of the way?
Okay, first of all, I got to be honest. So this is my first. I think I'm going to be here 5 times, right? 5 shows. Mm-hmm. He's in Disney World or Disneyland. So anyway, I got to say,
what are the Disneys?
I kind of had the bends. The bends in diving that you got to come up slowly.
Yeah.
Right. Because I'm getting back to regular scheduled programming, watching the NHL, because that, to the point, best international hockey in 15 years, and so watching that Four Nations face-off, and I had a comparable that, I was saying unfairly on the weekend. I go, is this slow? I was being unfair, but I remembered that years ago. You remember a team called the Flying Fathers at all?
I do.
Okay, So you wouldn't know
idea.
this. So there were a bunch of priests from Northern Ontario.
Where, like, they played at St. Mike's or something,
Well,
or they
they
did the tour.
Yeah. So they were like a fun, good hockey players.
Yes.
Like Father Les Costello had been in the NHL. Others could have been NHL players, and they started in Northern Ontario. A group of priests that were pretty good players, and they do some Harlem Globetrotter shtick, and they go around raise money. Okay, good charity ventures. So decades ago, in the Harold Ballard era, he put together a game between the Toronto Maple Leaf alumni. Like, there was no alumni then. And he told me to go, you got to get a team together. And guys didn't want to play with each other, and they're going to play the Flying Fathers. And all the money went to the Charlie Conacher Cancer Research Fund. So Maple Leaf Gardens was sold out. Like, it was sold out. It all came together really well. So early 1980s. So I'm sitting there, and I'm hearing older people talk about, and now I'm one of those older people, but they're watching like Frank Mahovlich and all those guys. Okay, this is first seen them play, and they're going, look at the passing. Look at the skating. I go, they're playing a bunch of old priests. Like, that's what they're playing. They're playing a bunch of old priests. What do you mean? But for these people, this was the team that won 4 Stanley Cups. They're going, oh my, it's just so different. So that's kind of what on the weekend, I found myself saying, oh, come on. I think unrealistic.
Where's the passing?
You're playing a bunch of old priests again, the Flying Fathers. So I had to get reacclimated, but I always do remember that. People seriously thinking like, oh my God, these guys, these Daryl Sittlers suck at everything. Look at these guys, the way hockey should be played.
That's hilarious. I've never, ever heard of the Flying Fathers.
Well, if you Google them,
I'm reading about it. I'm reading about it right now.
Big column. They were called the Harlem Globetrotters of hockey, and it's a neat story. They started organically just for charity things, and there were a bunch of people that chose the clergy or their priesthood rather than playing professional sports. Yeah,
the Flying Fathers played over 907 games. They only lost 6 times, Gordo.
Yeah, well, that's right. It said like the Harlem Globetrotters.
So the moral of the story is the Leafs should trade for a priest.
Yeah, well, and they should get Father Von Quinn. Yeah, he was the goaltender. Maybe as their depth goaltender going for the playoffs. Yeah.
Oh,
well,
my God.
I don't know. Pull out a style. I don't know if you need a priest, a minister, a rabbi, whatever religious denomination in the playoffs, so that's going to help you. So to get back to the Leafs, okay, I like it. Start again. First place in the division. Let's get that. Okay. Tkachuk being out for Florida. That's another, let's get that. Let's not be in the 2-3 matchup. Let's get home ice advantage. Let's be a little bit different this year heading in. And certainly the weekend was a great start for that with a win that you weren't sure about and then a win that was expected in Chicago.
Okay. Let's go to Kyper's Clipper, our first one of the day, and follow up Gord Stellick's comment on going for first place in the division with Craig Berube's thoughts.
Yeah, it's always it's competitive game, right? I don't know if you look at first place, you look at, focus on, the games we play as winning them, right? So you got to just take care of your own business night in and night out and not look at the standings so much. Just look at where you're at as a team and what we're doing day to day. I think that's more of the focus than looking at the standings. We can't control what other teams do. We only can control what we do night in and night out. And you look at the league and look at the standings everywhere, it's tight. So we got to win games. We got to be focused on what we're doing.
I think if it's one thing that at least Leaf fans can look at coming off the tournament and a big break for the players that weren't participating in the Four Nations, is that the consistency of what the Leafs had in net up until the break and after the break remained very consistent. Say what you will about pace of play or what you didn't really like seeing out of the skating part of the hockey club. The goaltenders, both of them, Wall and Stolars, picked up where they left off. I thought they were absolutely great in games that they could have easily lost one of them, Gord.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm saying the speed thing was unfair by me to comment, but yeah, just sort of from one to the other. But Sammy, that's again, I don't know the last time the Leafs have had this kind of depth goaltending and hopefully healthy heading into a playoff, like a 1-2 tandem. And I was really encouraged how Stolars came back from injury. Like Thatcher Demko struggled before he got hurt again. Linus Ullmark has had some struggles coming back, and it's almost been a seamless return for Stolar. So that 1-2 punch has been very impressive.
Yeah, Stolar's first game back. I'm trying to remember when it was, but it was against 2 as I'm quickly looking it up here. it was against Seattle where he came in that game and he was really, really good right away. So you're right. I mean, he's played 2 games since the long break that he had from December 12th to February 6th. I mean, it's crazy the break he had in between the games that he's played. He goes tonight. I think it's the right choice to kind of just go back and forth here. But this is the thing I've said to Kyper a lot of times, and I'll say it to you now too, is that I do think a lot of what the Leafs are is pretty similar to years past. Like you think of, the forward, it's a lot about the core 4. And, Tanev's a great ad, so maybe you can say the D-core's a little bit better. But ultimately, it's a pretty similar thing. The biggest difference is you're going into the game 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs, hopefully, with not a Samsonov type or a, Jack Campbell, who is great, and you'll make fun of me always for saying that he's Cujo. All the stuff that, like, just having these 2 goalies really, really changes how deep, in my perspective on this team, how deep they can actually go. Like, I really do have hope because of that.
Well,
I know hope's a dangerous
They had
thing.
one good goalie in Freddie, but he never really delivered the good. He didn't deliver the
too
good.
much, right?
Well, I didn't play too much. Right? We kept thinking he's the Kawhi Leonard. We had to get him like load management, whatever, during the season.
And he couldn't win big games.
Exactly.
Yes.
Never mind played. We stop making excuses. He could not win big games. And I love Freddie. I love regular season Freddie. But he was synonymous with what the team was in the playoffs. So yeah, I'll also to Sammy's point, Kyper, to add Jake McCabe, not just Tana, but OEL in the last couple of years, to add a couple of 3 core 4 guys like that, I think that's another upgrade. They may not forward depth. You don't have like guys like Hyman and all that. Where when they were on entry level contracts, you had a little bit more depth up front. It's probably a little bit. You could argue maybe a little bit weaker right now, but yeah, there's a lot more positives this year. Craig Berube has not been here every year, Craig. We got to look at the standings this year, okay? Yeah. I'm just saying we got to try something different here. That may have worked. You won a ring in 2019, but I think it's a very tangible goal to have something different this year and go in first place.
Okay, let's go to Craig Berube.
Just more on that. Like, it's imperative to avoid that, like you said off the top, either the Tampa matchup or the Florida matchup in that first round. If you can get that first in the division, then you're like with Detroit, who they've played really well against over the last 6 or 7 years. You get a Senators team, which get that conversation, but it's just so massive to avoid that 2-3 matchup, like you said.
Derek, clip 3 on Chiefs goalies.
Well, it's definitely nice that, we can get a nice rotation going here like we've had most of the year. I know Stoley was out for some time, but, that's a nice thing to have, and not wearing somebody out either, and using both guys, and they both played extremely well for us this year.
So wearing them out, I went back and looked at what Frederik Andersen played in the 3 seasons. The first 3 seasons with the Leafs. Played 66, 66, 60. It's a lot of hockey. That's looking back on that there's no goalie. Is any goalie on pace for that outside of Hellebuck this year?
No, and it's changed. Yeah. And we went through a period of first of all, everybody's wish and hope to have that guy that could play 60 games. And then we went through a period where we started watching teams go to the 1A and 1B. Mm-hmm. And then we had the window of conversations where you can't win that way, to now it almost being the norm.
Yeah. And it happened in a short period of time. Like this, he wasn't the only guy playing 60 games. By the way, it would have been nice. It would have been nice if he played 28 playoff games, but he never got the grind. That ends up being a grind if you go all the way. But it's funny, Kyper. Berube did a weekly hit with us on NHL Morning Skate after he got fired last year. So you could kick around. That's when a coach is great, when they're at loose ends and they're pretty candid. So he brought about the Philadelphia Flyers. Because they've been a real surprise team last year at battling again this year. But last year had been a real surprise team. So you talked about whether it's the karma Tortorella had, all these things. Right off the bat, first thing he said, great 1-2 goaltending. And that's before Carter Hart had to leave, which we know why. But he just mentioned about Urson and Carter Hart. Like, okay, all these other things about a team, you don't have the goaltending. You don't have it, right? And if you have depth goaltending, that's a real luxury. And that, so he pointed that out right away about the Flyers. And when they didn't have the depth anymore, that's part of why they sunk after. And obviously, it's a nice, if you want to call it luxury, predicament, whatever you want to call it, predicament meaning in who you start every game, to have in Toronto for a change.
Do you think it's because Kyper, you've mentioned this before in the past, and I'll ask you, Gordo, is it a predicament once you get to playoff time if they're both of them are in form, or is it just a luxury?
A luxury. That's a happy predicament.
Okay.
You know, like you've got 2 lottery tickets and they're both worth $1 million. We know which one do you give to your brother-in-law? The answer is neither. But anyway, you know, just that's called one's worth $500,000, whatever.
Yeah. I don't envision again one guy coming out fairly hot and then being pulled just because it's not his turn. But I don't envision one of these guys, if the Leafs are lucky enough to get to a conference final, I think at the most we'll see a 60-40 split. I don't think we'll see a 90-10, 80-20 split the way things are going right now.
And that's the same for a few teams. That, you know, and of course, Washington started Grubauer the first couple of games, and then Braden Holtby came in. And it's where, but to Sammy, maybe where I'll give you is, and Kippy, I wonder, like, did the Bruins, Jim Montgomery kind of get handcuffed because they'd had that tandem and he stuck with it, right? Back and forth in the playoffs. And then the other time he just went with Swayman, right?
Well, against the Leafs last year, they went Swayman game 1. Game 2, they went to Ullmark and lost. And then the rest of the series, it was all Swayman.
So he went away from it.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of saying, okay, well, Ullmark got moved. So it's not like they started the season with a goaltending controversy. They knew they were contract-wise, they're going to have to move one of them. But it's kind of interesting that he did that. And then this year, goaltending, which hadn't been an issue in Boston, you know, everything's been a bit of an issue in Boston.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that with Andy Brickley in about 15 minutes. Moving forward on Calle Jarnkrok, you got a couple of clips here. You want to throw to Berubes first?
Yeah, so this is...
Can you pronounce that again, sorry?
Jarnkrok.
He's doing it like his good buddy Matt's.
Jarnkrok.
There. This is the first clip about the update on Calle Jarnkrok. You'll love this, Kyper. Clip 5.
He's close. He's very close. You know, there's some things that have to be done with, you know, stuff. But you know, he's feeling excellent, and you know, he has to see the doctor yet, and he will do that shortly here. And but he's feeling great on the ice, like he's really ready to play.
That would be salary cap. Yeah. The juggling will commence.
Well, first of all, I love Craig. Thank God Craig Berube's not your doctor. Because imagine you're going to get an update. Well, we did some stuff. and we're going to whatever.
It's on the chart.
Can you get a little bit more precise? Whatever. What about the stuff? Yeah. It's the world of the balancing salary cap on top of the injury thing. Don't say too much.
So he makes 2.1. So that's what's going to be coming off LTR when he's ready to play.
Close.
So what do you like? What are they going to do here?
I don't know whether or not they got to move something out, is my understanding, before he can come.
Yeah.
So is it enough to send Reeves down?
Boy,
is it?
Who's going to tell him?
Yeah. But I was under the impression that as much as Berube's using the word close and shortly, that it would have been still difficult for him to come in
for cap reasons.
For cap reasons till after the trade deadline at the very least.
Well, look what the Red Wings did in moving Ville Husso, right? Just like you go, well, why is he going there? Well, part of it is they get cap relief, right, for something they're going to do, because there's only about a quarter of a salary that doesn't count when you're in the American Hockey League. So teams now, like what, making these kind of moves, and you're right. People have talked about Max Domi being traded, but I don't get that. That's been a good role player for the team. But
that's depending on what you think you can bring in.
Oh, well,
right?
No, 100%. That's why when we talk about trades, and it's all, what are you going to get back? It's always that thing, rather than throwing names out there. and it's understood that you have to be creative, and it's understood that also that could hurt a bit, that someone moves on that you really don't want to move on, but to better the team, to make it incrementally better, you maneuver things to make that trade.
And
So I just went.
did they move Husso before Andrew Kopp
Yeah.
got hurt?
Andrew Kopp was put on LTIR today, so that's almost $11 million that they have now.
So
that's gone out their cap.
Something may be up in Detroit.
Yeah, well, I mean, like that's going to be fun up to the trade deadline because all these teams that are battling, and you think about, like Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Montreal have kind of declared themselves that they can do selling. Philadelphia and Pittsburgh already have done it. So all of a sudden, like you're Detroit or whatever, like it's been too long. You're Ottawa, it's been too long, and you're there in both instances. You're Columbus, and you're there surprisingly so. So. Yeah, and one piece. Don't leave one stone unturned for your best attempt to try to make the playoffs.
There will be a number of teams that could tinker with the Tampa Bay Kucherov rule.
Yeah.
Vegas with Theodore.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Dallas is already there.
Florida with Matthew Tkachuk. Dallas,
They're already there. They're already
there. So there's a handful here that are going to exceed the salary cap based on their injury situation.
So according to cap wages, the Leafs have right now 1.3 and change in cap space. So I guess then to get to his 2.1, I'm not going to do bad math, but that's one contract of an entry-level one, or like a league minimum one, or the Reeves one, which would probably get them to that 2.1 or whatever, but they do have a little bit of cap space to work with.
2.2, you said?
2.1.
2.1.
Yeah.
So I got 2.2.
Okay.
You gave him a raise.
I gave him a raise, which fits Kali Youngkruk.
So there you go.
There you go.
Okay.
So I think so he's good. He's good as is. He's good.
Okay.
I don't know if that's what they want to do or they want to give themselves some more flexibility, but right now it looks like he's good to go.
And who are these, Leafs?
Is that like acquiring a depth player? Not for you. Like I've told these guys on a number of occasions, a few years ago, I just looked at him and go, that's not my type of guy in the playoffs. There's parts of his game that I've liked over the years. If he can pick up where he left off, I don't know what kind of player you're getting after all this long this time.
What Leaf has been the depth kind of player in the playoffs?
Yeah.
Like they added Blackwell one year. They added like a lot of guys that had done well somewhere else, and just same thing. I know it's been kind of a revolving door, although, you get Bobby McMahon making it last year and sticking and, but that's been the problem. It's not only have the big guns not been a difference maker in the playoffs, but those kind of depth players that when there's been great runs going, you look back and you see their value because the good depth players become. I mean, we saw what Bobby Holik did to Toronto a few years. Like those guys become more valuable in the playoffs, and whether it's just hasn't been the right time for them in Toronto and they did it elsewhere, or whatever, that's been a void. There's been no Nick Paul getting a big goal, like at a critical time, like he did against Toronto for Toronto in a playoff game.
All right, let's go to Craig Berube on what he thinks Youngkruk can bring the Leaf lineup.
Veteran player, very intelligent player, as you guys know. Checks a lot of boxes, penalty killing and end of games, face-offs. Like, he can play any position. He's a real complementary player with good players, which is nice to have too.
I do worry that he'll come back and they'll immediately put him up into the top 6 probably, right? Because they've been doing Holmberg up there a lot. It's been mix and match. So you have to imagine that if he comes back, he said he's a complimentary guy, he can play any role. You have to imagine he's immediately going back up there.
He's looked upon like Max Domi would be. Max is more physical. Max can do different things. Max will
better offensive
stick
player.
You in between the eyes if he has to. Not that Kali can, but as far as moving up and down the lineup, he's a guy that can do it and hold his own.
Pretty solid.
Completely embarrassing you.
Yeah, well, and last year there's a role player playing at center, Max, that I was impressed how he played in that Boston series, right? So, but again, you can only have so many of the same kind of players.
Yes.
Like I think that's a lot the way the Islanders are, right? that you can only have so many complementary players or whatever it may be, or how Craig Berube is described and how he values Yarncroke. So, that's kind of the thing. Like it's the same. So the point of difference is, Max will be more physical. Points of differences start kind of coming in. Who makes more money when you're looking to move around? That can be involved in making a potential move. So there's a lot. And then do you bring another complementary player in again just because it looks good on the trade deadline? Like, do you bring a real depth player in that can be a difference maker, provide something different to the team, versus a depth player that's the same in the mix you have?
Yesterday, prior to you coming out of the bullpen for Justin Bourne, he wrote an article on sportsnet.ca. I think it's still there on maybe wants and needs of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I think he had Colton Parayko on his biggest wish list. I didn't have the heart to tell him that ain't happening. But
he's got budget. If he's going to Disney World, he's got cap issues right now. Okay, so okay, he's got personal cap issues. So he probably's got no idea about the cap in the NHL
58
world.
cents a dollar.
Oh my God! Pay for Bourne.
It's okay. It's all right. Spend it, buddy. Can't take it with you. But still, it seems like the focus is at center ice for you, or revisiting some offense, some jump from the back end. We mentioned how terrific Tanev's been with McCabe, but it's not exactly like they're going to score a ton of goals here moving forward.
Well, again, looking back at what cost you first-round picks, Nick Foligno and Ryan O'Reilly, it's unfair because they both were injured, okay? But they didn't make differences, and there was a wow factor in both those. Luke Schenn, surprisingly, ended up being the best trade deadline acquisition of whatever the last 5 years, just because he found a spot with Morgan Riley. I thought I liked Edmondson. I mean, I liked those kind of deals.
But they were never deals good enough to get you deep.
No, well, everything didn't get you deep.
Yeah.
I just meant it, but I liked the way they contributed.
Do they need a major?
Well, they did that twice, and again, the guys got hurt, and it cost you a first-round pick, and you can only give up so many of the first. Like the Dallas Stars keep picking late in the first round, and they keep getting the Thomas Harleys, the Wyatt Johnstons, the on and on and on.
Stankovens.
Whatever.
So you're not expecting much out of the Toronto Maple Leafs?
No, I'm not. And we've had the wow factor. No, come on. These guys are good enough, and now they have the goaltending. Okay, so I'm expecting complementary depth pieces. That's what I'm expecting.
I'm of two minds on this, because while I do agree, ultimately what it's going to come down to is the guys that haven't been able to get over the hump, getting over the hump in some big games here. Like, it's always going to come down to the core four. It's always going to come down to Morgan Riley. It's going to come down to the goaltending. But I do feel like this team does need a bit of a jolt in the bottom half of the lineup. Like, it can't be complementary pieces are fine, but, I don't want to be talking about Alex Steves' playoff games and Pontus Holmberg, contributing in the top six in playoff games. Like, I do think that they do need some help here. I do.
And we're talking after a weekend where complementary pieces were the story.
Yeah, I know, which I do feel bad about. They were the only ones who scored.
Lawton's name's been out there from the Philadelphia Flyers. Can he be
I do like
the Nick Paul?
That would be one. Yeah. That would be one that brings you another variable. Yes.
The Ristolainen Lawton one is one that's made sense to me as a package for the Leafs, but I was maybe drive the cost.
Now he's doing packages. Is he bringing the brothers, the Schenn brothers too? Is that another one?
I saw that one.
I caught Elliot leaning towards the teams asking for the Schenn brothers together, and I'm like, can Brad Treliving just get one? Let's just start with one for now.
Now, when I say
instead of two,
like, do they even want to be together?
Maybe they hate each other.
But I mean, it's not like I'm sure there's this like Luke's got to be. It's funny. I ran into Luke, whatever it was, 7-8 years ago, by the visiting dressing room, and he kidded that he just said, "Yeah, I'm moving around state by state." You know how much he moved?
Oh my God!
Like, I mean. It was so he's thrilled that he got some stability in a multi-year contract in Nashville. I mean, there's still the allure of Toronto would have some kind of appeal, but it's But the other part, Kippy and Sammy, is with the Rantanen deal. Like, wow, Natchez and Rantanen moving, Calgary and Philadelphia. That's a real hockey trade.
Yeah,
that's not a The Canucks having to move JT Miller, that's not a trade deadline deal. These are real hockey trades. So a lot of stuff's been going. Yeah, and the cap going up, you got room to correct mistakes or whatever it may be. It just seems there's a bit more of the Wild West. I hope it continues.
Luke Shen, amazing path to over 1,000 games. Because you consider where his career was. He went down to the AHL halfway through his career.
Like
it's crazy. Came back up 4
years ago. His career was dead in the water.
Yeah.
He was playing. He played in the AHL for parts of 3 seasons. And then he comes back up and he wins 2 cups with the Lightning. It's crazy. Anyways, we should probably go and get to Brickley.
All right, we'll take a quick break. When we return, Andy Brickley, Boston Bruins analyst, color commentator for NESN. He'll join us. We'll get into the Boston Bruins and what's in store for Brad Marchand. And also, we'll get into a little Austin and Mitch. Are they tired? We'll get Craig Berube's thoughts, and then we'll get Gord Stellick's thoughts. That more when we return to Real Kyper and Bourne. Nick Kypreos, Gord Stellick, Sammy McKee. Let's bring in Andy Brickley, Boston Bruin color analyst, Essen. Andy, thanks for joining us as we tee up tonight's contest between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Boston Bruins. First and foremost, coming off of Thursday's Canada-US contest in Boston, just your overall thoughts, not only nationally but locally there. How did the fans take it?
Fans took it about as well as you could expect and hope for. It was really a win-win across the board, no matter how you look at it. It's a win for the league, a win for the Players Association, a win for the growth of hockey, a win for television, a win for the city of Montreal, a win for the city of Boston, just the overall enthusiasm and what this sport could mean to a lot of people, maybe even new viewers based on the way it went. I think the hockey community got the desired final matchup, particularly after that Saturday night game in Montreal. And as an individual, I got to tell you, in the interest of full disclosure, I had like a guarded optimism that it was going to be a great tournament, but I wasn't all in until it started. And then after that Saturday night game, then I was all in. So, for a 4-team tournament during the middle of February, during the middle of the regular season when you shut it down for 2 weeks. But, boy, did that win me over. It was fantastic, and the city of Boston was a beneficiary of it, and the crowd turned out, which was spectacular.
No, I agree that, you're looking at what was I don't know what I expected, but it's certainly more than realized my expectations. But, one thing, Andy, now, unfortunately, the residue is no Charlie McAvoy. I mean, he played a monster game against Canada, and I understand he was injured there. And so kind of the saga, how it unraveled. And so right now they're saying, no timeline for his return?
That is the word we've gotten. Donnie Sweeney had a press conference a couple of days ago, as I'm sure you're well aware, and he addressed the issues that everybody had, that being one of them. First of all, he led with Hampus Lindholm being done for the year, and my last visual was Hampus on the ice in a contact jersey preparing for post-4 seasons and being back in the lineup. And then you get the word that, I don't know if they use the word setback, but he is not going to play probably the rest of this year. And then you follow that up with McAvoy's going to be out for the foreseeable future. And now you're just 6 games away from the deadline when you were trying to figure out exactly which direction the Bruins were going to take. And all arrows seem to be pointing in that retool when you don't have your top 2 defensemen available.
And that's really put the Boston Bruins in a place where we aren't used to, Andy. And that's on the outside looking in to the Stanley Cup playoffs here. And I had to ask the guys before we went to break, when was the last time the Boston Bruins missed the playoffs? And I'm like, I haven't got a clue. But, how are fans taking this season that no one could have ever predicted?
Yeah, well, you can imagine what the Boston fan base is like when you underperform, and they've underperformed all year, Does it mean they don't have good players? No. Does it mean they haven't had some really quality wins this year? No. They expected to be in the postseason. The organization did, the players did, the fans did, and when it hasn't gone that way, even though you're continuing to hang around, there's a lot of vitriol, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of disappointment, and there's a lot of finger pointing at, the players. And eventually, because they made a coaching change, the focus is now shifted to management. The focus isn't on Joe Sacco. The focus has gone from Cassidy to Montgomery, bypass Sacco, and now more on Sweeney and Neely. And that's a natural progression, would happen in any hockey environment. But, yeah, there's a lot of disappointment, with laced with some anger, because I don't know if you caught the game the other night. You come out of the break. You never know what you're going to get after 2 weeks. But it's an Anaheim team that you feel like that you should be able to secure 2 points, and they do a nice job to force it to overtime, but then they lose. And then they immediately think about the 2 games before the break, when they had leads after 40 minutes in the 2 games leading into the break, against Vegas and the Rangers, and they don't even get to overtime and they leave points on the table. So, yeah, disappointment and anger, I think, is probably the best way to put it to describe the theme of the fan base right now.
Okay, so it's been an uncharacteristically bumpy ride. We know Don Sweeney, when he had the presser earlier, like nothing was going well. The goaltending wasn't, the free agent acquisition weren't, and all that. So now we're at the 2/3 point. The final 1/3, obviously injuries key. Nothing you do about those. But what is going okay now, and what remains bumpy in this home stretch, Andy?
I'm not sure I understand the question, Gord.
So, the free agent players, they seem to be playing better than Sweeney said. Is that kind of got better? What things have got better, and what things are still bumpy that they gotta really look at addressing in the last 1/3 of the season?
All right, well, let's just look at the obvious numbers and/or the underlying numbers that generally determine whether you're a playoff team. Their road record's terrible. Their special teams are bottom of the league. Their goal differential is terrible. They don't protect late in periods. They give up goals in the final 2 minutes of periods far too often. They give up goals in rapid succession, which questions their mental toughness. The list is lengthy, where it says this is a non-playoff team. How are they going to win? Well, it's got to be team defense, and you don't see the layers that you used to see. You don't see the goaltending that you used to see when you had the great tandem. It's down on Swayman's shoulders now. He'll play the majority of the games. He's going to have to steal you a few games. You can't simply rely on David Pastrnak to carry your offense night in and night out. You're not getting any secondary scoring. Look at the numbers on lines 3 and 4 in terms of offensive production. They don't get a lot in terms of driving the offense from the blue line. Now you take out your top 2 defensemen. So those are the bumpy, rocky aspects of what's in front of the Boston Bruins right now. A lot is going to have to rely on their top 6, maybe their top 4, and Swayman is going to have to be the guy that he was in the postseason last year if this is going to be a Bruins team that qualifies for the postseason.
Andy, what kind of trade deadline can Boston Bruins fans be forward to look at now with such a short period of time, and Boston still maybe teetering on thinking about making the playoffs here? A couple of tough decisions. Trent Frederick, a UFA, and also the captain in Brad Marchand.
Yeah, this could go a whole bunch of different ways, really, if you want to sit down and spend time and think about it. Tony Sweeney used the word cautious, and I think that was juxtaposed to the fact that it was aggressive, these last several years, right? 6, 7, 8 years, whatever it's been, aggressive at the trade deadline. This was phrased as cautious. I'll come back to the Brad Marchand situation, but I think they've made their decision. I think they've chosen the path that they're going to use, based on what we've talked about here in this conversation to this point. To me, it screams retool and not try to add to this current team thinking that you can do something down the stretch, get into the playoffs, and make some noise. I think through almost 60 games, you are what you are. They know what this team is. There's too many flaws on this team. So will there be transactions? I think so. But I think they'll be of the minor variety, earmarked or designed to help the team in a couple of areas. Can they get a little bit more talented? Can they get a little bit more speed in their lineup? They went away from regular season speed and skill in this past off season to hopefully add some more physicality. They felt like they lost the last 2 years in the playoffs after having a good regular season because they weren't built for the postseason. They wanted to go out and address that, and I think they lost some speed and skill from some of the players that departed that helped them win a lot of games during the regular season. So that's been an issue too. So maybe some moves that they can make as they determine whether some of these UFAs are worth hanging on to. Do you want to hang on to a Trent Frederick, Justin Brazeau? What's his future? Go up and down the list. But the Brad Marchand is an intriguing subject. The fact that he doesn't have a contract, hasn't had a contract negotiated throughout the year, kind of makes you wonder which way is this going to go? What does Brad want to do? He does have a limited no movement clause. But what does he want to do? What is his desire? I know publicly he said he wants to be a Boston Bruin for his entire career. He wants to end his career as a Bruin, but he doesn't want to go anywhere. But there comes a time where in those conversations, maybe he changes his mind and says, I want to go chase a Stanley Cup this year. 36, 37 years old. He's not in his prime anymore, but he is an example setter, and there's no shortage of will to win and will compete, and there never will be a shortage of that in his game. And anybody that feels that they have a chance to win this postseason, it'd be a welcome addition. So I'm not sure which way it's going to go. I think he stays as a Bruin, but I don't think the Bruins will be inactive come March 7th.
So, Andy, give us a little bit of a refresher here. Kyper said to Sammy, hey, when's the last time the Bruins didn't make the playoffs? And I got to tell you, I was a little bit surprised because Bruins win a cup in 2011. They go to a Stanley Cup final. They seem to beat the Leafs every year in 7 games, Leaf fans. But they have 2 years they don't make the playoffs in between. So this kind of retool maybe they're trying to do now. How did that all play out years ago that they actually were out of the playoffs, but we hardly remember it because they were back in with the force?
Yeah, and I got to be honest with you, Gord. I'd have to go back and take a look at it myself. I know they missed 1 year just by a couple of points, and it was very disappointing because they were right there and they still had quality teams or quality plays and should have gotten into the postseason. But yeah, they missed a couple of years early there, and after winning the cup, and after going to the final in 13, it wasn't shortly. It was only shortly thereafter where they missed for a couple of years. I think what you got to go back to 2015 was the last year they didn't qualify.
Right.
Yeah. So I can't give you an exact reason, Gord, to tell you the truth why they missed. I just know that they were awfully close. It's almost ancient history to me now.
Did the three of us drink heavily back then that we don't remember?
Yeah, I just. Well, I know I do now.
Well, you remember 2011, you remember 13, you remember 19. You don't remember between 13 and 19 as memorable. So.
12 games on tap, including Toronto and Boston. Have a great call tonight, Andy. We sure appreciate you stopping by.
My pleasure, fellas.
All right. Andy Brickley, Boston Bruin color analyst.
Because first of all, yeah, they win the cup in Vancouver, very memorable. That getting to the final, very memorable. And then, I guess Andy's point was, much like Tampa Bay didn't make the playoffs 1 year. Remember that? Tampa Bay didn't 1 year. Just whatever, that they actually were okay, just just fell short, and they stayed the course. But, man, they would have had Chara then and Bergeron and, maybe Marchand wasn't what he became later on. But that's like mind-boggling. They did not make in the playoffs.
Getting back to the Toronto Maple Leafs, we got a few minutes before we reboot for our national hour. But your overall thoughts on Austin and Mitch at the Four Seasons, and now since returning,
The Four Nations.
4 seasons.
They were staying at the Four Seasons. Let them finish.
Kyper's done that.
Yeah.
I want to go on vacation so badly. Justin's in Florida?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm stuck here with you.
You want to go on vacation to Disney?
I want to go to the Four Seasons.
Oh, okay, that's fair.
where I want to go.
Fair. That's fair.
And now Sammy's got a clip for me from Berube on the possibility of these guys being tired. Do you want to go to the clip first and then have you react?
Let's go to the clip. Yeah.
All right. Craig Berube on Austin and Mitch.
Well, they're definitely, for sure. I mean, but they're grinding through it, and, we're trying to help them as much as we can and for rest purposes, and we're going to have to do that going forward here, too, for a little bit.
Take it away, Gord.
How am I supposed to react? Anyway, yeah.
Did you see tired guys on the weekend?
I don't know. Well, Connor McDavid -3 in both games. I think you get mentally tired. And you would know that better than any Kipper because you played. Like, I think there's a mental part more so than the physical, because Craig Berube said something that wasn't as much in vogue when you played, and certainly when I was around. Oh, we practice every day. We're on the ice every day. Yeah, and you're exhausted all the time, and you're not, and so common sense has come in about, particularly late in the season. Some of these players they won't have long practices, won't practice a lot. I mean, they manage things quite well. So I don't know if I saw tired. I think maybe some mentally tired players on the weekend, which will only be natural. I just think, particularly for Mitch Marner, of the three of them, that they have not got deep in the playoffs, okay? We all know that. So this was like going deep in the playoffs. And he came up with a big goal at a huge time. He came up with a couple of big assists in the clutch that, that's what was eluded them in the past, that kind of, play, whatever, in overtime, a Gary Roberts goal, a Gary Volk goal, or whatever, And I'm thinking maybe, that's the best about resonating moving forward in the playoffs. Austin gets a bit of a bum rap about what the overtime goal. He played really well. He could have scored overtime goals. So I think it's a positive. Always wonder about him being 100%. I mean, do you think he's 100%?
No. I don't. And I'll go back to the game that he skipped in the Four Nations.
There you go.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, why?
Well, you're already in USA, so you could pick players like Woody. I got to believe he would play if it would have mattered to get in, or if in fact would he have not been able to play and just 3 days later I don't know. But again, that ends up being, well, last year it looked like everyone's healthy, and then Nylander and Austin Matthews weren't able to play at times in the first round. So I don't know what to think. Again, all these things. It's when game number 83 starts, we'll find out the real thing. But I just think positives. I like that a guy like Erik Karlsson had a strong play.
Yeah, he did.
I like that. I really like that guy, and obviously it's not been a great go for him in Pittsburgh. But anyway, I thought good experience for the three Leafs.
One more Clipper. Kipper's Clipper that you got here, Sammy, that intrigues me. I've not heard it, but John Tavares being affected by the contract year. Why'd you pick this?
Because he was asked about it. I thought it was a relevant conversation for our Toronto Maple Leafs hour.
Okay.
9, please.
Not a little bit.
There you go.
He's a pro. He just does his thing, it's every day. He just comes to work. He does his routine. He's got it down, and he's played extremely well for us. And I don't think he thinks about it, to be honest with you. Not that I've noticed, or I haven't noticed any of that with him.
Yeah, and I find it kind of strange because he looks exactly like he has in the past, where he can score points. He's just doing what he's done his whole career here. I just find that interesting that someone would bring that up.
Yeah. Well, it was brought up with the Islander thing all those years ago, right? It became a bit of a distraction. I like what he said. He seems like a consummate pro. Kippy, everyone's always thinking about their contract. It's not,
No, for sure.
It's just human nature. I mean, you saw two goaltenders last night, or you saw Ville Husso get traded, and Vitek Vanacek play phenomenal last night. And both of them are saying, "Thank God we signed 3-year deals a couple of years ago, because we don't deserve it right now, and we're trying to get a new contract."
There are some floating reports out there that perhaps the Leafs could be close with him at $7 million times 3, I believe.
Ooh.
I mean, that to me just seems really premature.
Yeah. I
Would you be okay with that contract?
Well, obviously you want him to do 3 years at $1 million. That's what people up there are saying, because he should do that so you can bring players in and keep them under the cap. So whatever. I'm big on John Tavares. I didn't see the urgency to sign him, but he may be saying, you're kind of taking advantage of the fact that I want to be here, and that can backfire sometimes. It backfired with Alex Pietrangelo in St. Louis when he went to Vegas, right? Numbers came into play. So I still look. Man, the playoffs are going to be such a deciding factor. Like he came here and has not got them to the promised land, nor has the others guys they drafted from within. But hey, the more the merrier. I don't know. Figure out the cap.
If you're waiting on Mitch, you better be waiting on John, if you ask me.
Great first hour, George.
George.
Yeah,
same. Yeah, you were strong, Norm.
Like we shot you out of a cannon, buddy.
That's it, buddy.
We go national next. Steve Valiquette, Gord Stellick, Sammy McKee. Don't go away. Plenty more on the Real Kyper and Bourne Show. George. Welcome into the national edition of the Real Kyper and Bourne Show. We are live on Sportsnet 650 in Vancouver and Sportsnet 960 in Calgary. This hour of Real Kyper and Bourne brought to you by Bet365. Nick Kypreos, Sammy McKee, and in for the vacationing Justin Bourne. Let's welcome in Gord Stellick. Gordo, how are you, pal?
Kippy, I'm great. Well-deserved vacation for Justin, I take it, and I hope you get one soon as well. I mean, not that you need one. I just mean, post-trade deadline and
I think you need
that, grinding it out.
I'm all right for now. I'm good, and we've got a trade deadline right around the corner here, which always keeps everybody on high alert here.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine that you think that this one, with a rising salary cap, will have a different feel than we've seen in past years.
Already has, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you start with Mikko Rantanen. That trade, Nature's going the other way. You've got a real trade between Calgary and Philadelphia, not a trade deadline deal. That was a real trade. Vancouver, because of the situation, making some trades. So I don't know if they'll all happen on the 11th hour day, but I hope this kind of Wild West mentality continues.
Kyper, can I ask you, because you were one of the big insiders. You were breaking stuff. I remember specifically you broke the Taylor Hall Subban thing, or maybe that wasn't you. I forget the big one you broke.
That was
Stamkos. Stamkos,
was
remember?
PK for Shea Weber.
Yes, that's the one that you broke.
Yeah, that one was the famous trio coming within, I don't know, 9 minutes
Something
of each
like
other.
that.
Do you miss it?
Do
you miss being a big
But I
insider?
watch Elliott on his phone and buried in his smartphone 24/7, and I'm like, I don't miss it.
You don't get, you know what?
I just pick my spots now.
Yeah.
That's all.
And also, with all due respect to Elliott and everybody else, in all seriousness, the insiders, because you're right, it's exhausting. You do not get the same scoops like they did, and Elliott would get them too, but like you got. I mean, it's really changed.
Yes.
Like, it's really changed. Like, organizations, there's very few surprises anymore compared to the old days. And if you want to keep your job in an organization, you better be very careful about that as well. So it's really been buttoned down.
Sammy, are we getting music?
I don't know.
I like it.
I can't hear anything, and I was just hearing music.
Okay. Somebody in an elevator or something? Or?
I think we've got now warmed up music for our Tuesday guest and Steve Valiquette. Maybe that's what's going to happen in the. No, Derek Brandeau's waving me off like 3-2 fastball.
What is going on? Don't look at me.
You're the producer.
Yeah, I'm sitting across from you. I don't know what's going on up there.
So is Steve Valiquette in a band today or something? Is it his band that's coming on?
We'll find out.
The guy
shortly.
can do anything.
He can.
Yeah.
And a guy that also, as much as we talk about the clear sight analytics, and he does a terrific job bringing us numbers that we believe sometimes are relevant to the game.
Right.
Sometimes not so much, but he also has his ear to the ground when it comes to that inside stuff.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll get a little bit of that. All right, let's welcome him in, Steve Valiquette, for his Tuesday hit. How are you, pal? Well rested?
I don't think he's hearing us. Oh, there he is.
Oh. You okay?
Oh, no, I couldn't hear anything.
All right. You can hear us now. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Good. Are you recovered a little bit from a tournament that we weren't sure what we were getting to? Holy moly.
Yeah, you know what, Kyper? I loved it, man. I was in Utah skiing snowbird with my family. We had half the mountain watching this game. Like, everybody got into it all over the world. And I know that you can talk about, does this change anything for anybody in the future? Does it change anything for the game? I'm certain that it did over here in the U.S. and especially and specifically in places that you wouldn't expect. Like my wife said to me, and she made the most sense of this to me. She said, don't forget, in this country, you guys are the last dog to the bull. You have to make an impression when you have the opportunity. I thought everybody did the most with the platform they had, Kyper.
Sounds like a beautiful Hallmark greeting card. You're the last dog to the bull, whatever. I can imagine. So when Jordan Binnington was anointed as the guy by John Cooper, did you believe he would be the guy, or do you think maybe he would hedge his bets somewhere along the way? And what did you think about that particular pick? And boy, what a run he had.
You know what, Gordo, if we go back and roll the tape from the other shows, I was trying to defend it as much as I could while not saying that there were better options out there. So I was certainly somebody that was on the fence. And I forgot one very key thing, that he is very good, whether it's real or imagined, to lift himself up and put pressure on himself to fight back at the naysayers. He's done that his entire career. I was around him a little bit when he was younger, where a goalie coach that I work with, Andy Chiodo, we were working together on some Binnington tape when he was in the AHL, actually. And to see his growth from 10 years ago to playing in the East Coast League, the American Hockey League, playing in Providence in the same year that he beats the Bruins in Game 7. He's always had that element of being able to get pissed off and play better. And it's not for everybody, that piece. And I know that it worked for me. And I was trying to relate to it as I was watching him in overtime, because I felt like I learned that piece about myself when I was playing in the OHL. And our generation had to figure out a lot ourselves without the help of a sports psychologist, without the help of mentoring that the players get now with player development. And one thing I remembered from my time with the Erie Otters, we were playing in a 7-game series that went the distance against the London Knights. And there was a player from London. This guy's name was Mike Mazuka, and he was a nut job. He was probably their leading PIM guy. He was always looking to fight somebody. And at the red line, when I was stretching, he'd come by me. He's calling me fat. He's chirping me. He's in my ear. And I remember saying to myself, just keep saying it. Keep saying it. You're helping me here. You're fueling my fire. And in that series, we came back from down 3-0 to pushing it to 7. We ended up losing 2-1 in Game 7. But I took that lesson with me into the pros. I feel like Jordan Binnington knew that whether it was real or imagined around him, that he was able to create an environment where he felt like it was him against the world, and it brings out the best in him. I think that's why he's always trying to pick a fight on the ice. He's trying to get himself fired up when he's not. And we know that a long NHL career, it's very difficult to manufacture that energy sometimes, but you can't take away from him the fact that he knows how to play under pressure better than any goalie in the NHL right now. And there is some statistical evidence that actually shows this as well, which I think is very neat. And I'm going to walk you through it, because unless you play goal, you may or may not know that there's a big difference to the way you feel when you make a breakaway save when the score is tied 2-2 in the third period. It's a completely different element mindset-wise to make a save at 2-2 versus making that same breakaway save when your team is up by 3 in the third period, or even down by 3, where the pressure is off. So sure enough, what goalie in the NHL last year had the best save percentage when the score was tied? It was Jordan Binnington.
Wow.
And he also was a +15, which means in expected goals terms that he saved his team last year when the score was tied 15 more goals than he should have, which was also best in the NHL. So there was some evidence there for that. And I like to try and identify like what is clutch goaltending, what is money goaltending.
Yeah.
And that's how you do it, Kyper. You have to look at who's making a 2-on-1 save when it's 1-1 in the third.
Yeah.
Who's doing that?
And
you see those three. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, regardless of how crappy the last goal that went in on him.
Yeah, right. Well, which I think, again, gets him even more pissed off, And, when Gordo, I got myself into trouble with a Jack Hughes comment earlier in the year because I said that he was trying to embarrass him. Well, what I think I was doing really was trying to manufacture a reason why I wanted to see the Ranger bench lift up and have something to fight for. And again, it goes back to that, whether it's real or not, you're trying to fire yourself up, for Christ's sake. And when I see him play that way, like that was really, for me, guys, the big difference between he and Hellebuck in that game. Hellebuck's first goal against that McKinnon scores, he gave that goal up 7 times on 18 shots last year in the first round, the same thing. And do you think that McKinnon didn't know that? That's who beat them out in the first round last year. But Hellebuck sinks into his net, and he backs up when that pressure comes to the net, where Binnington is fighting on his toes and getting to the top of the crease. He threw technique to me out the window and played with passion and emotion. And, it was one of the first times I never gamble, guys. I don't like it. But I put a lot of money on Canada because I believed in the Canadian way in one way, but also their top guys were just going to dig in a little bit harder. And I believe that like through my core. And I was texting Sammy through the game. We were going nuts and he's smoking darts and we were laughing our asses off.
So. Guilty.
Hope mom's not listening.
Yeah.
Valley, was his performance enough? And not that there be a huge goalie market out there, but was his performance good enough where maybe a few teams might want to knock on Doug Armstrong's door and say, you know, he's only got 2 years left and you guys are going through this rebuild.
Yeah.
Gladly take him off your hands?
Well, I was prepared for this question. I thought you were going to ask me this. So before you say that this is not possible, don't forget that we do have cars that are actually driving themselves now, and they've actually had some cars recently. I don't know if you saw in the news, they're flying over other cars. So this is, I believe this is possible. If you put Jordan Binnington in the Edmonton Oilers net right now, and we've talked a lot this year about how the Edmonton goalies aren't great off the rush. Edmonton's been giving up quite a bit off the rush lately. They're actually down to 15th in the NHL as far as rush chances against, east to west chances in their own zone, which is also something that Stuart Skinner is having difficulty with. They are 24th, meaning they're giving up east to west in their own zone, D-zone coverage. They're giving up odd mans. They're not playing well enough defensively to not have a very good goalie that has a very good save percentage, clutch, and off the rush. Put Jordan Binnington into the Edmonton net this year, all right, because we have this tool analytically where I can actually put a goalie and know what his strengths are and all of the chances faced by those Edmonton goalies, Skinner and Pickard this year. Binnington would have stopped 17 more goals if he was in Edmonton's net than Edmonton's goalies have up until this point in the season.
Okay,
but
but
that's not
that's
enough
really
evidence
cool
for you.
Yeah.
Then what you do is you watch the video, which comes with all of these shots. Just watch it. Binner can play off the rush. Binner can play clutch, and they have the team in Edmonton that needs a little more goaltending than what they have right now because they're not defending as well as they were last season. And that would be my case. And on top of that, if I'm St. Louis and I've got a very good backup and Hofer that can certainly play, and you've got a great development model. You go back to look at the last 10 years in St. Louis's net, and David Alexander there has done a heck of a job. So they should be confident, too. They could rehabilitate another guy, a guy like Caden Primo, perhaps, or a Levi, maybe Devon Levi, guys that are in the minors that could still fill NHL roles at some point. But, yeah, that to me would be something I do. Yeah, sorry, any questions? I keep rambling on here.
No,
I'm still excited about that Canadian win on Thursday.
Well, and so getting excited about Jordan Binnington. Now, I think he has a partial no trade. I'm not, whatever, just.
Yeah, partial, but 20 teams.
Yeah, so who knows if he even wants to go to Edmonton? Who knows? Again, Doug Armstrong maybe wants to retool and stick with the winner. But the next point to follow up, though, Steve, just like Stuart Skinner, I'm torn because it does, as you say, if Edmonton wants to get to the promised land and you want to leave no stone unturned, you should look at, that including the goaltending. Yet this guy took you to Game 7 of a Stanley Cup final as a kid, as a young player. Like he took you where Jordan Binnington took the St. Louis Blues, just didn't get that last Game 7. So, I'm just curious about upgrading the goaltending, but also maybe being unfairly critical of Skinner.
A bit of a recency bias, maybe because I watched the game against Philadelphia Saturday, Gordo. I don't know if you saw the game, but man, like he was moving with cement boots out there. And I don't know if he's taken a step back. Edmonton is certainly giving up a lot more, but off the rush, Philadelphia is one of the best rush teams in the NHL. So certainly that was not a great matchup for the Edmonton Oilers Saturday coming out of the break, them playing fast, etc. But if you look at the goals, I mean, he is shooting his head out towards the sideboards when the pass is coming to his right. He was doing some, and I'm hearing you. I don't think that it was ever fair to Stuart Skinner, and he's done a marvelous job being able to manage this because Jack Campbell, don't forget, is supposed to be the starter there. And Stu's supposed to be the backup, learning, apprenticing, and he's done a terrific job. But for where they're at right now, with what's at stake, with possibly not winning with Leon and Connor, and Connor's contract coming up, and he wants to be a Maple Leaf, Sammy tells me. I don't know, you know?
You're watching and listening to Steve Valiquette, analyst for the New York Rangers on MSG, CEO, ClearSight Analytics, and regular contributor here on the Real Kyper and Bourne Show. Okay, we're going to stick with goaltending here, and Ville Husso on his way to the Ducks. Does that open up something for Detroit and perhaps Gibson, or could Binnington sneak into a conversation?
It's a good one, Kyper, because the one thing Detroit should know about themselves is they're a top 5 defending team when it comes to quality chances with time and space. They're very good at closing. And I think time and space, to me, guys, it's one of those enhancers to any scoring chance. Connor McDavid's goal, game-winning goal on Thursday, would have qualified as a time and space scoring chance from the slot. Well, Detroit's very good at denying those. Guy like John Gibson, who is a first shot goalie, needs time and space taken away for him to excel because he over challenges. Not a bad fit there. I think that Anaheim makes a move, and I think it's certainly going to be Gibson because of Dostal and how good I think he is. And I think that when I look at time and space, and I'm going to name some teams here because I think this is important. The teams that are not in the playoffs currently today, they're all bad at this. And the teams that I think that we could agree are possibly contenders are very good at it. So teams that are not good with time and space and giving up a lot of it, Nashville, this is from worst, okay? Nashville, Pittsburgh, Anaheim, New York Rangers, Philadelphia, Buffalo, Columbus, all non-playoff teams. You don't want to be a team that gives up a lot of scoring chances, grade A's with time and space. It's pretty simple. Now, go to the teams that we would say are very good teams, contending teams, great defensive teams. The Los Angeles Kings are the best at not giving up scoring chances with time and space. So when you take a Darcy Kemper, like this is where I think we're going with trying to pair a goaltender with a system too. You take a Darcy Kemper, he's a castaway from last season in Washington. They can't wait to get rid of him, and Pierre-Luc Dubois goes the other way. They really swap contracts they don't like at the time. And when you have a defensive system like the LA Kings, and they've been doing this for a few years now, you can insulate a goalie that is a castaway from somebody else. You don't have to go out and get the top guy. And if you go back to October, November, Kemper was settling in, but he wasn't stealing games by any means. I thought that LA was really covering up for him. But if you watch Kemper now, he is playing with so much confidence. It is out of this world. And because if you take a goaltender and you put sticks around a guy that's going to shoot, and you're taking away the fact that, and I do this all the time when I'm training goalies, the shooter can't manipulate the puck and move to the right because my stick is there. That's what I do as a goalie coach. I just give a little stick in the slot. Can't move it backwards because my body's there. So he can go towards the net or possibly to his left. But you're taking away 2 of the 4 options. And with Kemper this year, I think LA is taking away 3 of 4 shooting options every time he faces a shot, so he can lock in on the shot and be more valuable. I felt this when I played for Nick Fotiu. And if you guys are familiar with Nicky, do you remember meeting him, Kyper, when you were with the Rangers? Nick Fotiu, was he around the team a little bit?
Are you kidding me? One of my heroes.
He's the best, right? He's the best. So I love talking hockey with Nicky. He coached me when I was in Hartford. Guys, guess how many shutouts Jason LaBarbera and I, we had 30 shutouts over 2 years with Nicky's system. 30, okay? Nicky's system was straight lines, hard stops in the D zone. Our weak side winger would always come to the middle of the ice and leave the defenseman at that time. Think about this is like 04, 05, 2003. This was a time where these things were a little bit of outside the box thinking, but he would call it his safety guy. He would have a dry erase board in the locker room, a line going through the middle of the ice, cutting the ice in half. And he said, I don't care what happens in our D zone. The puck doesn't cross there, whether it's a player carrying it or a pass. And that's where the genesis of ClearSight Analytics came from. I started with trying to get value as to what those chances of going across that line would actually result in goal probability. But it came from Nicky. And Nicky's system, guys, Connor doesn't get the puck without Brock Nelson on him. Brock Nelson would have been on Connor McDavid, and he would not have had time and space under Nick Fotiu's system. Because if Fox doesn't cut off the puck behind the net, then it would be quickly Matthews on him, and then Fox would come in behind with layers, and then you'd have a safety guy just between Brock Nelson and Mitch Marner's pass. So this was just something we were talking about yesterday. And under Nicky's system, guys, I barely even worked out the summer before, and I led the league in save percentage because I had bought a house. I had like zero money, and I put all my money on this house, and we were going into a lockout, and I was renovating this house because I had to rent it out to the Bridgeport Sound Tigers. I'm playing it.
Oh, we dropped him.
Hartford.
There he is.
Oh, freeze?
Yeah.
Terrible I ever played at.
We got you back.
Yeah, you know, one thing I was saying, Nick Fotiu, you had your heads up when you're in the old blue seats at Madison Square Garden. He would throw pucks in the pregame warm. They had to tell him to stop. Remember Maple Leaf Gardens? He was throwing them up in the gray seats. He was like a fan favorite.
Gordo,
so, okay.
He was nuts. Hey, Gordo, one quick one. Do you know what he did in Long Island once?
What?
The intermission puck, the shot from center ice, for the car, he made the hole bigger. And he cut the hole. And somebody won a freaking car because Nicky Fotiu cut the hole for the slot bigger.
Man of the people. Man of the
I could
people.
use his help.
He's the best.
So what I want to ask, okay, Kevin Lankinen. So he goes from being in the summer marked down on aisle 7, anybody want this goaltender? And finally, Vancouver takes him to a 5-year, $4.5 million per season contract. So Kevin Lankinen, did he change the way Kevin Lankinen played goal, or did he simply seize an opportunity that he never had before?
Kyper will back me up here. Before the season began, I said that our data was showing that Lankinen was going to have a big season, and we were wondering at the time how long it was going to take for Vancouver to figure it out. I think Vancouver actually dropped the ball here. They overpaid. They should have gotten this contract done 3 months ago. When you are evaluating what you have, aren't you supposed to be the first ones to know? And based on previous data, 2 years ago, he was ranked 15th. Last season, and I'm talking about adjusted save percentage, which is, Gordo, it's just taking out the noise. Take away the dumps from the neutral zone, the ones that don't really hit the net. I mean, adjusted save percentage. So the truest number that you can really judge a goalie based on the difficulty faced. 15th, then he went to 12th last year, and he's in the top 10 for the first 2 months of the season. Guess what, guys?
Yeah.
Sign the deal. You would have saved yourselves $2.5 million a deal on that deal. He signed for $875 this season.
Yeah.
And he was pushing, because last year in Nashville making $2 million, he was looking for $2.5 in July. Doesn't get it. I think it was late September he signs with Vancouver, something like September 22nd. Signs with Vancouver at $875. Vancouver should have been all over this like a fat kid on a Smartie 3 months ago.
Price of poker kept going up on this guy, and then Demko is still the health question is right back at you.
Oh, and guess what you're going to get, Kyper? You're going to have $13 million in goalies if Demko gets what he's worth after a great season next year, that I'm sure he's going to have a great summer, be ready for next season, and then he's going to be coming out of next year at 8.25 or 8.5, and now you've got 2 goalies and $13 million. To me, you could have had Lankinen, if you had your head out of the sand, a long time ago for a lot less.
I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up longtime New York sportscaster, iconic guy in Al Trutwig, who the three of us have all had our paths crossed with him. Mine certainly in our Stanley Cup year. Adam Graves pouring champagne all over him in our dressing room. But, your thoughts on Al, and arguably Valley, the most recognizable New York sportscaster we've ever seen?
I hope that people know him from his work, because he was so brilliant. Tour de France, the Boston Marathon, the Summer Olympic Games every year for the last 20 years, or at least 4 of them, or maybe even more, 6 of them. I don't want to mess it up. But the Winter Games, this guy's in movies, Cool Runnings, if you remember him in Cool Runnings. The Van Damme movie that was filmed in the hockey rink, Sudden Impact, that might have been called. He's in so much. And look, I got to work with him for 5 years. This man mentored me, showed me the ropes. We had little bits where people thought that we didn't like each other. We were always messing around, but he made it fun. And nobody could frame the opening of a game like Al Trautwig. He was brilliant at it. And a storyteller like you wouldn't believe. And watching him watch the Rangers, Kyper, he would kick like people out of the green room. You're bad luck. Get out of here. We go out to we're watching one of the games, and he's going out for a dart break, and he's out on 7th Avenue, and he's saying to me, "Can you believe all these people aren't inside watching this game? What's everybody doing out here?" Like, it was the most important thing in the world to Al Trautwig that either the Knicks or Rangers would win again. And he had funny stories, guys. I don't know how much time we have. Can I tell a couple?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we got a few minutes for sure.
So meet the parents. It's his swimming pool that was the scene where Ben Stiller takes the spike and it breaks the
yes.
Oh, really?
The bride's nose. Okay. So this is the best part of the story, though. So it was about 50 grand, I think he's getting a week, and they said it was going to take 2 weeks, and they're over time, and they're really parked all their trailers on his grass in Long Island, right?
As they always
do. He's really
do.
pissed off at this point. He's really pissed off. And he finally says to one of the production assistants, "Can I at least meet De Niro?" Because they keep telling him, "I can't meet De Niro because he's in character. He's a method actor and he's in character." So anyways, Al's like, "I'll take my chances." So he walks up to his trailer. De Niro's coming through. They're about to do the scene. And he puts his hand out to shake De Niro's hand. And De Niro walks right by him. So Al is incensed, okay? So then what happens next is, after the scene, one of the production assistants asks Al's wife if the available bathroom upstairs in Al's master could be used for Robert De Niro to shower in. He's like, "Tell De Niro to stick it, get him out of here." He wants him off his property, right? So they are trying to negotiate that they want to lift out some room in the bathroom where Stiller's putting the Speedo on, and Al kicks them out. He doesn't let them film the scene. They were going to take some walls down just to get enough room to get the cameras in, etc. So Al's really pissed off. He kicks them off. They never get to film the bathroom scene. Months go by. He gets invited to the premiere, the premiere of the movie. So he goes to the movie with his wife, and sure enough, Ben Stiller's putting on his Speedo in Al's bathroom. And now Al's pissed off again because he didn't give him permission. So he goes back to the production company. He's yelling at them, and they showed him that what they did do was they went into Al's bathroom. They took pictures of everything, right down to the kitchen sink detail, or the sink detail, as well as the towels in there. And they recreated that entire bathroom, Al's bathroom, inch by inch in the studio where they actually filmed the scene for the movie, in the bathroom scene. And Al was like, him telling me this story and many others, he was amazing. It was as much fun to be around this guy as anybody I've ever been around.
And he should have got residuals off of the copyright of his bathroom.
Yeah. I was saying to Kyper earlier that I got to meet him my brief time in New York, and I remember once Barry Watkins took the media out, and Al happened to be doing that game. It was in Chicago, and but what struck me was, like, Sam Rosen was still kind of starting, right? So now he's become that legend. It was Marv Albert was a wonderful guy to meet too, very, very friendly guy there. But Al, like, he's not a hockey, he's a sports guy, he's everything. You know, even back then, he was a young guy, right? Yeah. And she said, "Holy crap, this guy does everything." And you just rhymed it off, like whether it's Olympics, Tour de France, all those kind of things.
Even
and
the Yankees forever too, Gordon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like so most of us are kind of slotted now into a particular sport by and large. And he was one of those incredible generalists that just did everything phenomenally.
And Goro, he started off as a ball boy for the New Jersey Nets. That's how he got into doing it. Yeah, they liked his voice, and somebody said, "Why don't you try doing the radio?" Because they didn't have somebody to work one day, and he just fell into it. He just loved sports. Wow. Yeah, his story's amazing.
Gone too soon at age 68. Hey, Valley, great stuff as always, man. Rangers and the Islanders, I assume the Rangers still think they're very much in it. Just quickly, we're going to see an active New York Ranger hockey club at the deadline?
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't know if you guys caught any of the game against Buffalo or Pittsburgh Saturday, Sunday, but they couldn't have been any more listless. And tonight against the Islanders, this isn't a statement, it's more like a question. If they can't show more, then how can anybody in good confidence move forward with this group? This is it tonight. And I don't know what to expect, but it better be a lot more than I saw Saturday, Sunday effort-wise, or it's over. I got to be honest. I don't know if I could say that on MSG Networks. I'll be out of here. But, like I'm worried and concerned. Yeah.
Crystal clear on your side, just like your analytics site, Clear Sight. Great stuff as always, Valley. Thanks for doing this, pal.
Hey, my pleasure, fellas. Have a great one.
What do you think? Rangers, another team. Boston, Rangers, like no one saw this coming from 2 out of the 6 original 6 teams.
Well, absolutely. So one thing, first of all, is his ability to talk in layman's terms is huge, because there's a lot of people that I think know their stuff, but I don't know because it becomes just white noise, right? And that's a real credit to Steve. Rangers, Boston, that's why, hey, leave no stone unturned. I talked about that, hypothetically about the Edmonton goaltending. Like, you got to be in the playoffs if you're the Bruins or you're the New York Rangers. And you ain't there right now.
Yep.
And I don't know what's worse, that the Bruins have had from the word go, a bumpy ride. The Rangers had a great start. People forget they won the President's Trophy last year, got off to a great start, and then, as Brian Burke used that line, the 18-wheeler went off the road for them, and it seemed like they've been getting it back. But you can't be listless if you're serious to battle for a playoff spot you never thought you'd be in a battle for. So I can very much see both of them not making it. And that's why Columbus, Detroit, Ottawa as well have to look at, can we do a move or two to strengthen our position?
Game time?
Game time, baby.
It's game time presented by Bet365. Visit the app for latest odds and find out why it's never ordinary at Bet365. It's 19 plus. Ontario only. Please play responsibly. So lots of games on the ice tonight, like you mentioned. Canadian teams. Calgary's in Washington to take on the Capitals. The great chase continues tonight. 13 goals away now for Alex Ovechkin. Really feels like you got to keep an eye on every single one of these games. It's crazy. The Calgary Flames are plus 165 underdogs in that game. Montreal hosting the Carolina Hurricanes. As you would imagine, Carolina big favorites, minus 220 on the money line. In Boston, the Toronto Maple Leafs are big favorites tonight, minus 160 on the money line. The Boston Bruins are plus 135 underdogs. And the Oilers, the other Canadian team in action tonight, are in Tampa to take on the Lightning, minus 105 on the money line for the Edmonton Oilers. And this is a very, very rare for me to do this in game time, but I'm looking to the NBA tonight, and Luka Doncic and the LA Lakers are hosting the Dallas Mavericks, the team that traded him away. And I think he's really mad about it, and he's a guy that has a chip on his shoulder. Give me Luka Doncic to score 50-plus points tonight at plus 1,600. He is going to be out for blood tonight, and I think he's going to have a huge night. So there you go. Those are that's my game time. That was game time presented by Bet365. Visit the app for latest odds and find out why it's never ordinary at Bet365. It's 19 plus. Ontario only. Please play responsibly.
Nice job, Sammy. Okay,
Thank
we'll
you.
take a quick break, and when we return, we'll get into some news and notes, including Matthew Tkachuk's appearance on The Tonight Show. A lot of people talking about growth in the game. We'll get Gord Stellick's thoughts on how much that helped move the needle. Plus, Jets Morrissey motivated after missing the biggest game of his life. Plenty more when we return to Real Kyper and Bourne. Nick Kypreos, Gord Stellick, Sammy McKee. Just before we signed off on yesterday's show, I got a note saying that Matthew Tkachuk was in New York to go see some doctors and stuck around long enough to have an appearance on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah.
Did you catch it?
I caught it. I
thought he did a good job.
Absolutely.
It was very pro-America, of course, but...
As you would expect.
Yeah, as you would expect, and rah, and greatest thing in the world is wearing the colors, and yeah. So I think he did what he was supposed to do, and that's continue the excitement long after, unfortunately for the U.S., losing.
Mm-hmm. So I think what's interesting about that, it just shows the success of the Four Nations face-off. I know Sammy's on you about it. I screw up the Four Nations thing all the time, and I get yelled at because they wanted to call it the Four Nations face-off. And because normally it's someone that wins a Stanley Cup or something. Yeah. So he's on based on the incredible vibe that happened last couple of weeks. And to your point, how much do these things grow or not grow the game? I mean, in the United States, well, they certainly can't hurt. There's a clip of, remember that show To Tell the Truth? And it would say, would the real Nick Kypreos please stand up? There's a To Tell the Truth. 3 individuals in their Montreal Canadian gear, including skates. Will the real Jean Beliveau please stand up? Okay, that's how. So they didn't know anyway, and they kid around, and the real Jean Beliveau with full equipment stands up. When you won the Stanley Cup, I watched Letterman. Letterman was taped in New York. I remember Rudy Poschek was out there in the crowd once, and the crowd started chanting his name. But I thought there'd be something about the cup because the day before he called Matt Loughran trying to get 2 tickets, and it was set up with Matty,
Yes.
and for Game 7, it was funny. And Marv Albert came up with 2 tickets for somebody, whatever. I heard later that person sold them or something. But anyway, they and then the cup, I thought, and then nothing. Then he talks to Biff Henderson, and the cup was behind whatever, and out came Mike Richter, Brian Leach, Mark Messier with the Stanley Cup, and couldn't have been more perfect in New York, being on the David Letterman show. So I've always liked those kind of visits, and hockey players, I'm biased, but there's just such a genuineness about it that and I like when they show their personality and always come across well.
There have been over the course of like 40 plus years, like moments, U.S. moments. Of course, we can go back to 80 with the U.S. gold medal team, Miracle Ice, somewhat in the 90s with a U.S.-led team by the Billy Guerins and the Mike Richters and the Brian Leaches of the world over Eric Lindros and Brendan Shanahan in 96.
World Cup in 96.
World Cup in 96. And then Sid's gold medal game, 2010, and then this one.
Mm-hmm.
So my question to you is this still about growing the game in the U.S. first before we grow the game as a true World Cup here? Because the sense to me is like we got to grow the game south of the border, and we have. Gretzky did that by moving markets that we wouldn't have thought twice about 40 years ago, like Dallas and Florida, and his second team in California past LA. But it just seems like we're trying to grow the game in the U.S. right now before we can look at a true World Cup.
So, you mentioned growing the game internationally.
Yes.
And I think part of it is we have a history in Canada with the Summit Series, the Canada Cup, as it was called before it was the World Cup. So aside from 1996, there hasn't been that U.S. success. I really think the best thing next year would be for USA to win the Olympics. And I'm not being just like another Miracle on Ice. No, but
Sam just had puked in his mouth.
I'm just
I literally
saying.
just got punched in the stomach by that comment.
Look when their women's team won the gold. I'm just saying 2002, 2010. Look how jacked we were in Canada to finally have best on best hockey and get a couple of gold medals. It wasn't the same in 2014. It's more special when you're in North America. But anyway, like I just think because Miracle on Ice, they keep going back to it, and I thought they used it really well in and around the Four Nations face-off as well, because there hadn't been best on best in 8.5 years. You can't milk it again next year, right, around the Olympic team. But I thought they did a good job.
Yeah, it's just like I'm almost 60, and like there was a genuine excitement about Matthew Tkachuk being on Jimmy Fallon last night.
Yeah,
and it's because it's hockey, but like Wayne Gretzky was on Letterman 30 years ago.
He hosted Saturday Night Live.
He's hosted Saturday Night Live. And it just seems like, although we've grown markets in the U.S., we're still kind of at the same place we were 40 or 50 years ago. If we get an NHL player on a late night U.S. show, we're like, wow, this is really cool. Wow. We're in 2025. Not 1976.
Yeah, why is it such big news?
Why is it such a big deal now? But we are. So
now, if they have international success, will the World Juniors play better there? Because whatever it is, they don't embrace the World Juniors like we do in Canada.
But do we have to get hockey close to baseball and football in the States before?
But also, should we really care in Canada? Like, should we say, well, whatever? So, hey,
it's our sport still has a tremendous challenge to get respect south of the border, and when we do get it, it's like, oh my God, they noticed us.
Well, this was a home run. This was a grand slam, and the timing of it. The Super Bowl's done. It was a terrible Super Bowl. Baseball's not started. The NBA All-Star Game was terrible. So this is kind of a rarity.
Yeah.
Like I'm almost 30 now, and I can remember. Yeah, just anyway.
The other thing that bothers me a little bit now is that when Wayne was lighting it up in Edmonton, it seems like south of the border, they knew more about Wayne Gretzky back then than they know about Connor McDavid today.
Well, was it because he had Janet Jones was his partner for a couple of years before? I don't know.
No, even to me, maybe even prior to Janet. No.
Well, he was.
I mean, don't look at me. I wasn't born.
I mean,
so.
I mean,
But he was dating someone who was a singer, Vicky Moss, who was. I don't know. Like Alan Thicke was a buddy. I don't know.
Do you think they've acknowledged Connor McDavid as a true superstar of the game of hockey?
They know who he is now.
Well, they know who he is now, but you know,
why isn't he on Fallon?
Well, a guy. Look at Tkachuk's personality. Look at the Tkachuk brothers' personality. So part of it, and then you got Jack Hughes with a great person. I'm taking American players right now, but just about certain ones that there's just are seem to be more suited for that kind of talk show environment. But yeah, I mean, I don't know I don't follow talk shows as much as I did, because we're watching hockey all the time. Hockey wasn't available back then, so you watch the talk shows.
Yeah,
because you only had.
I hope the NHL can kind of ride a bit of a wave here and not just go back to you got to strap a flag on a tournament or an Olympics for people to get excited.
Yeah. Yeah, so you hope it's organic growth.
Yes.
And I think this was certainly organic, genuine international growth just by basis of a great job by the NHL and the NHL Players Association, and especially the players.
What time will the games be on if it's in Italy, right? So they're ahead. So the afternoon games probably here, if I'm trying to think.
I don't know. I heard they shut everything down in the afternoon and they take naps.
No, I'm talking about
the
Olympic
Siesta Bowl.
because you remember in Sochi the games were at like 6 a.m. Like there was really weird timings for like when the game's going to be on. If you're having it, is that not relevant?
No,
is that not relevant?
Yeah. No, I tell you what, it's relevant. So 1998, which you wouldn't remember, but that was the big one.
Yeah,
the first time, and I was filling in on the Fan Morning Show that week. I was normally on 1 to 4, and you remember how late the game started? So that infamous game about where the shootout and Wayne Gretzky wasn't picked, like everyone's watching it, and I was getting up early in the mornings, and I remember the face-off, and then I fell asleep, and I woke up for the shootout. That's what it was sleep. So the next morning, I had to talk about it like I'd watched every second because I'm up 3 hours later, and that's part of it's a little bit off-putting when they're at odd times. It's better when they're in their time.
Did you guys catch John Tavares saying that he went to bed before overtime?
Just lie and say you didn't. That's so brutal to me. I couldn't believe he said that. Are you not Canadian?
Well, he's an honest guy.
Lie.
It's
I don't know. I kind of like it a little bit.
You like it?
Yes.
Because
I'll tell you what I think. I'll tell you how I interpret it.
That he's pissed
I'm not on the team.
Pissed he's not there.
I'm not on the team.
Well, he went to the World
Championships. You guys
Champions.
don't think I'm good enough to be on the team? I'm not watching.
I went to the Worlds last year.
Okay.
Right?
You can be a bit of a sore loser. It's fine.
Wait, Kippy, he went to the Worlds last year, which not a lot of veterans do, and he was captain of Team Canada in the Worlds last year, so I think probably part of his motivation might have been, I can't speak for him, that it would enhance his chances of being picked. And he's had a solid start to the year, so that I like that. I like a little more pizzazz from him rather than straight talk.
Yeah.
And they need a little bit. Hey.
Regardless how you feel, it shows a little bit of personality out of the guy.
What's the little bit of personality? They went to bed early? What a personality. Oh, my God.
No, I hate it. It's the old Seinfeld. I got snubbed. You snubbed me. You snubbed me.
You got two teammates of the team. He's head-to-head.
No,
it's Canada versus USA. Watch the overtime.
If he was on the team, they would have won in regulation.
Bingo.
That's what he's saying. Everyone would have been in bed at that point.
He's getting older. He needs his sleep.
Can I ask you, though, do you think, USA and Canada and growing the game and all this stuff in the States, it would help if they, and this is just me throwing shots, but it would help if they won once in a while, right?
Well, no,
at the best on
that's what I'm talking about.
I know, but
but 1996, that was a big win. But I got to tell you, this is how it was received, okay? I'm time. Got a minute, right?
Oh, yeah,
okay.
that's time, yeah.
So anyway, I was doing the games on TV 11 with Paul Hendrick and some Leaf games. We happened to be doing a game in Anaheim early in the year.
Uh-huh.
So Leafs, Anaheim Ducks, and Paul Hendrick and I are sitting alone in the lunchroom there. And Tony Tavares, a guy named Tony Tavares, was president of the Anaheim Ducks. So he's there, And he's like, he was pretty front and set, like a hands-on kind of guy. And he's telling us he's pissed that his coach missed training camp to coach USA. His coach is Ron Wilson. They won. They won the World Cup like 10 days earlier. And he's conveying, Paul Hendrick and I are looking at us in amazement. Because that was a great series. I mean, Keith just saw Keith Tkachuk fighting. Yeah. But that was what the Anaheim president thought of his coach being absent to what turned out coach Team USA in their biggest international win, their last big international win. Now, I think it's changed since then, but that's what you were looking at back then.
Do you think the Olympic hockey will be as palatable to the American audience as what we watched in the World Cup or the Four Nations with the NHL rules? Because I think the NHL rules and the NHL.
I think fighting's completely gone to another level right now. First thing that Jimmy Fallon talked about, it was the 9 seconds.
The scraps.
Yeah.
But you're not going to get that in the Olympics.
No.
Like, it's not going to be the same. It'll be brilliant hockey,
but you're going to get
it's
it
not physical.
every other year.
Yeah,
because
sure.
it'll be NHL sanctioned in every other year. So,
and it's the best players. So it's not just the fourth liners that are going out there. And it's like your day where everyone probably had 2 or 3 fights during the course of the year.
And if by chance the NHL can replicate that type of intensity every 2 years, I'm not sure you need the Olympics.
Yeah, I actually agree with that.
Okay. I'm not sure the players need it.
Well, that's what's going to play out down the road. You're right. What are we going to look back on? Is the 8 Nations Cup, which is going to be 8 nations or whatever they're going to call it, is it going to get dwarfed by the Olympics when we look back? Or are we going to kind of start and say, you know what? Rather than their rules and playing at 3 o'clock in the morning, this thing, and then every time you get that kind of fight, which is still part of the game.
All I know is right now it's set up that these NHL players every other year get 3 weeks off for spring break. Like, I can't think of a better thing. Mm-hmm. Like, where was that when I played?
So you want to be
going down to
liner?
Hawaii, Mexico, ride a banana hammock. Come on. Like every other year.
I'm a little uncomfortable.
Banana.
Well, it's
but also you want to be on the team, right? And probably very few people get a chance to be on multiple times, whatever, to represent their country, right? You're not going to start with. It's unlike the All-Star game where certain players get tired every year; they got to go again. I think every second year, everyone's going to be fine to be on the team for as long as they can. I mean, John Tavares showing a little glimmer that he probably wasn't happy that he wasn't on the team this time.
What about if you're doing the 8 nations face off or 8 nations facing off, whatever you're doing? Some of these teams aren't going to be able to fill a roster with NHL guys. So that'll be the question that lends to me. Like, you have to get players from the AHL or the KHL guys, Swedish league guys. Like, you're not going to have enough.
Well, Finland was kind of close to that.
For
Finland
sure,
was kind of like that. Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
And then do they have a history of playing together?
Yeah.
You don't play on club teams like used to be. Like the Czech Republic team that won in 1998, a lot of them were playing outside the NHL, so there was a togetherness. Yeah. Plus, they had Dominic Hasek.
95 during the lockout, myself, Mike Hudson, and Brian Noonan went to Mexico during the lockout.
How was that?
Really fun.
Were you there the whole lockout?
They went up on the parachute, and I rode a banana behind a tugboat.
Oh, okay.
That's the banana I'm talking about. Not
it's all about
the other banana. Sammy,
the one that Bourne's wearing on the beach, right?
Get your mind out of the gutter.
Oh, no, Bourne is not wearing that
Gord,
at Disney World.
Great job today, by the way.
Well, thank you.
Great job. You got Andy a little confused. You had to ask, what you meant by a question. Do you do that often? Confuse your guests?
Yeah, I like to do that to see if they're on their game.
Keep them on their toes.
Yeah, that's it. Yes. Hey, that's the best thing, to be unafraid if you don't understand a question. So good on him.
Good on you for coming in here. We got you the rest of the week.
That's correct.
All right. Enjoy 12 games tonight. We'll focus on Toronto and Boston. We'll do it again on Leaf Edition, hour 4 o'clock tomorrow Eastern.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Gord. Sammy. Thanks, pal.
All good.
Our thanks to Steve Valiquette and Annie Brickley. Enjoy, everybody.